Okay, thank you all for being here. I'm Commissioner Kurt Smith, and I want to welcome everyone here. Before I turn the evening over to our Public Works Director, Mark Bernath, I wanted to thank everyone, and my hope is that we can clear the air, because I can tell you over the last probably year and a half or 2 years, there's been an awful lot of misinformation and falsehoods that I've heard, and I'm sure there have been a lot that I haven't heard. So I hope that we can clear the air tonight and put all those things behind us, move forward, work together, and make Rockledge Drive and the trees look better than they ever have. And if we work together, I think we can get there. So, Mark?
All right, good evening and welcome. So again, I'm Mark Bernath. I'm the Public Works Director. We're going to start off by just going around the room for those that are on the dais, of those that are in attendance from Brevard County. So not necessarily in the order that's up on the screen, but if we could start from the left and just work our way, who you are and what you do for the county, please.
Brevard County Public Works Contracts Administrator.
Alex S.S., Assistant County Attorney.
Jason Kelly, Public Works. I'm the county operations board.
Darcy McGee, I'm with Natural Resources Management.
Susan Jackson, Public Works.
Frank Abate, the county manager.
Kurt Smith.
John Denning-Hoff, Assistant County Manager.
Eden Bentley, County Attorney.
Karina Gum with Public Works, I'm the Traffic Operations Manager.
Christine.
Christine Villette, I'm Assistant Commissioner Smith.
Dave Colton, Public Works.
Ed.
Adrian Chakowski, Legislative Commissioner Smith. I'm Maria Diaz, Operations Coordinator for Public Works.
All right, thank you. All right, so before I begin, I know that there's, as the commissioner alluded to, there's a lot of discussion that has been both put out there on social media and other forums. I'd ask that throughout the discussions tonight that we have decorum and civility. What we'll do, as was up on the screen, is I'm going to have a short presentation where, as the county, we're going to just put out some basic facts as well as what we aim to do. This is really just summarizing, if you will, what we actually put out to the homeowners. But we want to make sure that we get out what the message is, and then we are going to open it up to public comments. At first, we're going to have comments for the homeowners, then we will have comments for anyone else, and then we will wrap that up. And so I'm hoping by holding comments until after I complete it that I answer some of your questions. If not, you're welcome to make those as public comments. We'll take those back and hopefully we can address them at a later time. So, just a brief history, and this is not meant to be, from the age of time, but back in 2014, when a lot of this started becoming contentious back for Rockledge Drive, we received some requests for trimming trees for solid waste access. And so, we're talking the waste management trucks. And we sent out letters to select homeowners that were impacted. And at that time, we started having some concerns or some pushback. Again, in 2017, we did that, but that was for public service vehicle access. And actually, I just want to pause for 1 second. I realized I forgot to mention Commissioner Lober has, he represents District 2. He is trying to make it. He had a family emergency, so he may come at some point during this session, and he is planning to, if he does make it, he will be sitting and joining us in the back. But I did want to pause real quick and just make that announcement. So in 2017, we had received a request for trimming, but for public service vehicles. And again, this isn't meant to be a complete anthology, but in 2018, we did an original tree assessment that was done by our county arborist. We sent out letters, but at that time, due to a lot of the concerns, it was put on hold. We met in 2019 in the summer we intended to meet in the summer. There were some concerns, and we didn't get to meet with other than several individuals, but we later met with council representing some of the homeowners. And at that time, the council for those residents had asked if we would do a one-way study, and could we somehow mitigate the trees that we are looking to either trim or to remove. And so we did that. Now, you may be wondering, well, why did it take so long? Well, as we started getting that statement of work together, working with an outside consultant, we then were faced with COVID-19. And one of the primary things you need to do when you're looking at a traffic study is you need traffic. And with the decrease in traffic during COVID, we decided it was better to delay that until after traffic started resuming. So we picked that back up as traffic started picking up in the January timeframe of this year, and that was completed earlier this spring. At the same time, we brought this to a discussion again with the commissioner. We went out and actually spoke with some of the residents out on Rockledge Drive and decided that it was good if we dusted off the previous tree assessment. So we did that again as well, and I'll get into that in a moment as far as what our findings were. So we finalized all that, and then for those that received letters, that was the end result or the final product that you had seen. And for those that didn't receive it or don't know what I'm talking about, we actually individualized a letter. Either you had a tree trimming letter or a tree removal letter, and I'll go into some of those details of what that is. We gave a actual map which showed whether or not it was a tree or multiple trees needed to be trimmed and or removed, and then we went into what some of the details will be in this brief. So one of the primary things that we want to do as part of this and our goals is really we want to provide residents, vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists a safe place to do all the aforementioned. We want to remain sensitive and demonstrate environmental, aesthetic, social, historical, legal, economic, and other valid concerns. We want to proceed in a manner which is transparent as possible and provide appropriate options to all property owners and residents. We want to minimize tree trimming and removal. We want to preserve and or reestablish where possible the canopy as a scenic drive for future generations. We want to mitigate or eliminate trees undermining road integrity, and we want to minimize future issues which continue to undermine the road integrity by replanting trees that are further away, and we want to reconstruct failing road segments to an acceptable level of service. And we believe that we can achieve all of these with the property owner's help. And so we don't know, but we suspect that if you were not one of the property owners, maybe you did not understand that that was the county's objectives, and we want to make sure that you understand that. So what is driving what's behind that? Well, there's certain standards. One is a vertical clearance standard of 16 feet. With appropriate analysis, we can actually drop that down to 14 feet. The maximum vehicle height is in Florida is 13.5 feet, and as I put up on the slide, with an auto transporter, it can be 14 feet. So there's various sources that are listed there between the Federal Highway Administration and FDOT, but really you need to look no further than the Brevard County Code, Section 86-69. It says that we shall comply with FDOT standards and specifications, and we point specifically to that where it talks about vertical height restrictions. And so given that the maximum vehicle height is 13.5 feet, and we have to clear at least 6 inches above that, we are at the 14 feet. And so when we went out and did both assessments, we are trying to make sure that the trees are trimmed adequately to that 14 feet. We're not looking to do any higher and certainly no less. As far as horizontal clearance, well, that varies and that gets a little bit more tricky. We set in our letter a 6 to 10 foot expectation, and without getting too deep into it, there are differences for vehicle distance. There's differences in the Brevard County Landscape Code. There's a lot of complicating factors, and actually if we followed the Brevard County Landscape Code to the T, it could actually be half the distance of the canopy, which in some cases could mean we would never replant some of the trees. So one of the things that we would be proposing, if we did get your cooperation in removing and replacing a tree, would be to actually get a waiver as part of our proposal to waive that particular landscape code, so that this way we can make what we're proposing viable. Because we realize that if we simply remove the trees and don't provide a solution, that would not be tenable for the residents or the owners that live there. So that's kind of the standards that we go by, and that is what is the basis of why we are where we're at. So I think it's important to realize, that it's not just passenger vehicles, but some of the other public service vehicles that service you every day. It's your fire rescue vehicles. It's the transportation service vehicles. It's waste management. It's even your neighbors, though. It's not just public service vehicles. We have many requests from your neighbors which have recreational vehicles, such as RVs, where they say, my RV's getting scratched or dinged up or dented. And at this point, we can't go in and do what we do around the county every other place where we have this exact issue, and that's because we're sort of at an impasse. So as I explained to one of the folks that are here tonight, earlier today, everywhere else, if we get a call that says we have a tree issue, it's not this back and forth or discussion. We simply mobilize, one of our field teams goes out, and we just go and cut it. We trim it to the standard, and we'd like to get to a place where we're working with the public, yourselves, and doing that. And over time, if we are trimming it adequately and restoring the canopy and maintaining that, I think we can still keep the canopy, but we can ensure that these vehicles can have adequate clearance. So what was involved in the assessment? There's not a lot of rocket science here. We assessed what the tree type was. We looked through our property information to see who the owner was, the address, how many trees per address. We noted observations such as, was the tree viable? Do we need to trim it? Does it need to be removed? We took photo documentation, we mapped it, we georeferenced it. Was it in our right-of-way? Can it be preserved if we did the one-way study, which I'll get into in a moment? Was it preserved by the one-way study if we actually pursued that? Was it causing pavement damage, so that this way you as someone that drives on our roads, you have to drive that every day, so we want to make sure we give you an adequate level of service on those roads, and so we wanted to note all that. And so that was really the assessment. Our observations, and I apologize, it looks skewed up there, but there are 3 dots. There's a yellow dot, an orange dot, and a red dot. It doesn't look that way on my computer back at the office, but it does here. But we identified 37 trees. This is actually down from 42 when we did the original assessment. So the yellow dot is meant to be 6 minor limbs, 13 major limbs, and 18 where I have in parentheses identified removals, and that's a distinction there, identified removals, because we are not forcing anyone to remove any trees, nor are we coming in and clear cutting or suggesting that we're clear cutting, as some in social media or the press are suggesting, and I'll get into that in a moment. We are simply identifying that they need to be in order to meet the 14-foot vertical height requirement. So down from the 42, well, why is that? That's because over this same time period since we did the original study, there have been multiple accidents. There have been issues where those trees have been taken down for us by those that are in this audience without our help. So that can continue, but we would prefer to be proactive. Out of those 37 trees, 8 of them are in the right-of-way. 29 of them, however, are on private property. And that presents a problem because it's on private property, but they overhang into our right-of-way. And that's where we have an issue from a public safety perspective, because we have to ensure that you, as the motoring public, our public service vehicles, et cetera, can make sure they can go through unimpeded. By district breakdown, 2 of them are in District 2 and 35 of them are in District 4, which is why the District 4 Commissioner is hosting this. As I mentioned earlier, property owners received letters specific to their address. So they had not just this one map that is shown on some of the screens, but specific to their property address, so they saw exactly what tree we were talking about and what we were recommending. Our plan is in FY23 and 24 to resurface and in some cases reconstruct the road. To be frank, we have planning to still do. There are drainage issues to still address, and this is not a meeting on drainage. This meeting is really to discuss tree issues. But separately, we've been working with property owners for the last several years to address some of your drainage issues. And those that have been most vocal about drainage issues refuse to donate any easements so that we can address the drainage issues. We are very limited on what right-of-way we have to be able to do that. But we continue to work on drainage issues, and we have to reconstruct this road because of drainage as well as tree damage. The number is up there, but we project in 23 and 24 that we'll need to spend over $722,000 to be able to replace that. All right, so one-way study. So as I mentioned before, this was requested by council for the residents as a means to potentially reduce impacts to the number of trees that we needed to trim or to remove. And the county looked into it. We hired a consultant. It took us a little bit longer to start because of COVID and just our contracting rules to be able to get a consultant moving on it. But we did it in earnest. We completed it several months ago. Our primary focus was to determine if a one-way road can handle the traffic redistribution while reducing the need for tree removal. The consultant provided the recommendation, which is shown up on the screen, based on the design requirements resulting in traffic impacts, maintaining bicycle use, and location of existing trees. The cost for the county to implement it would be $209,000. However, it would only preserve 11 of the 37 trees. And so when we looked at it, we quite frankly wouldn't get a lot of bang for our buck. Additionally, it would induce additional safety concerns, which to us was not acceptable to the county. So what you're seeing in the diagram is the consultant's suggestion had a 6-foot northbound contraflow bike lane, which means that the traffic and the bikes drive in the same lane, with a separate 12-foot southbound vehicle lane, and then a 2-foot shoulder to minimize tree and other impacts. Now, if we had more of a right-of-way, we could talk about lots of options. The problem is we were limited with trees, we're limited with right-of-way, we have utilities, we have poles, and so they looked at several other options that, as is mentioned on the slide. bi-directional bike lanes, varying lanes and shoulder widths, and they determined, as well as center laning it, and they determined none of those were viable when they looked at all the state regulations and other requirements. The final report is still pending review and acceptance by the county, but we are reviewing it. We just received it a couple weeks ago. But this is the one that they had recommended, and for the aforementioned reasons, we don't think it's the best way to go. So moving forward, the letters that we sent out talked about tree trimming. It's the county's intent to tree trim only in the county's right-of-way. We're not coming onto private property. We're not clear-cutting trees. We are just trying to trim so that we have the 14-foot vertical clearance. And the tree trimming letter that we sent out says that we intend to do it after 18 August. We sent this letter out the end of May to give everyone advance notice. But we also stated in that letter that every owner had the option at their own expense that they could hire their own tree trimming expert, because we recognize that they may want to come in and do their own trimming so that they balance the tree appropriately. We also offered our on-site free consultant of our county arborist. Some of the residents have taken him up on it. To date, we actually trimmed one tree. We even removed one of the removals from the list because in discussions with that particular resident, they decided they would rather a heavy trim, if you will, and so we decided that we could live with that, and instead of removing, we were able to eliminate a removal. Can we do that with every tree? Probably not, but what it says is that the county is proactive, and through our open dialogue approach, we are trying to work with you and your neighbors if you take us up on it. Our county arborist is available Monday through Friday if you call. If you can't make it, you could schedule an appointment. He'd be happy to come out and meet with you on site, look at your trees, and work with you. As far as tree removal and replacement, this is a voluntary program. I want to foot stomp that this is not the county coming in saying that we're clear cutting all of Rockledge Drive. As we previously advised, it is our intent to reconstruct and resurface the road in FY23. I mentioned we still have some drainage issues to resolve, but that's our intent. And our concern, as we stated in our letter to owners, is what if we go in as we're tearing up the road and we further either damage or kill trees. Our intent in doing this voluntary program is to be proactive, offer a solution now, several years in advance, replace your tree at our cost so that we don't kill your tree. The county arborist believes some of these trees will not survive, so we believe we are being proactive. This wasn't just a county solution. This was actually one of your neighbors. The county commissioner, Commissioner Smith, myself, Mr. Denninghoff, and I were out there in October. We were driving and walking through your neighborhood. It was one of your very own residents who approached us and said, I might not be happy if you remove one of my trees. And again, I'm roughly paraphrasing it. It was a number of months ago. But if you offered to pay for it, I won't necessarily oppose you. And so this was us coming back with the very plan that one of your own came to us with. And in the press and in social media, you guys are accusing us of trying to clear cut Rockledge Drive. Nothing could be further than the truth. We are coming to you with a voluntary program of, if you would like to participate, we are willing to pay up to $2,100 per tree, and that would include the removal, the replacement, and the payment of county fees for us to pay you in exchange for moving your tree back with a new tree, so that this way we can reestablish the canopy over time, but get out of the current issue that we are having. All agreements would be reviewed and pre-approved beforehand, so you know you have the authority to act. So this wouldn't be something like a bait and switch. We would review it beforehand. We'd sign an agreement with you. You would get a licensed contractor. It's very clear in the paperwork that the owners that got this letter of what documentation we would need, and you would have to meet the required codes so that this way you know you'd get reimbursed. Our goal of setting an August 18th deadline was very simple. It was to keep it straightforward, and so that this way we had a deadline we can work around, so that we could move forward. And if we don't get your participation, we'll continue with those that want to move forward. It should be made clear, though, that the program moving forward is predicated on getting interest by residents, and ultimately doing so requires the Board of County Commissioners approval. Commissioner Smith decided that we could have went two ways. The staff had posed, we get the approval and then come to you, or we come to you and then go to the board. He chose that we would do it this way, and so that's the way we've done it. Ultimately, I need a public interest determination to spend government funds, and so if we have a willing number of residents that want to do it, we will obviously work with the commissioner, but I'll bring it to the board, seek their permission, and then we would sign the appropriate contracts with each of you that want to do it, and we would move forward. Again, we are not out to clear cut the entire Rockledge Drive. We are seeking to be proactive with those that want to work with us. And if not, when we come and reconstruct or resurface the road in FY23, we'll do everything we can to keep your trees healthy. But we are concerned, and that's the reason why we're trying to work with you now. So the application process. So you submit an application. You'd fill out the entire form. The agreement would be done by the property owner. You would need to submit to us a copy of your deed, proof of ownership, tree replacement design sketch, which you would get from a licensed tree contractor, right-of-way application to work in the county right-of-way, and a W-9. And so these forms that I'm going to flip through real quick are actually part of the application that we submitted to each owner that had a tree removal application. And not going into each one of them, but you could see there's a spot for signature, and then there's a spot for us to give you a conditional approval. There's some highlighting there where you would give your name and your parcel number. There's a spot where you would, again, you would fill out, who the designated individual is. This form is for us to sign a contract with you that we would make good on providing the reimbursement to you. This W-9 is just so that our county finance staff can actually pay you, because we would be reimbursing you, and you would be giving us the receipts that you actually paid a contractor. Upon the completion of work, we would give you an inspection report that says, yes, you did what we all agreed to, and that's how you would get paid. Within a certain amount of time, we would ensure that you would give us the invoices, and then we would ensure that you get paid. Forms for your contractor. This is something that your contractor would fill out, but it'd be an authorization to act on your behalf. They could also download it on our website, which is listed here. This was also in your package if you are a homeowner. And also the authority to act in our right-of-way, which if you're taking down a tree close to the road, you would need to do. Again, part of the $2,100, we are reimbursing you for those application fees. Finally, what is the way forward? We've identified which trees we need to trim. We are proposing to residents that we want to remove and replace on a voluntary basis some trees for removal and reimbursement. We would work to reconstruct the road in the coming years, but we want to work with the county residents in the future together. We want to prevent lower branches from growing too large in the future. We want to identify, remove decaying branches. We want to prune and trim going forward, and we want to restore the canopy over time. I'd like to point out that this is not, the picture behind this is not some fantasy. This is actually South Tropical Trail, so this is in Brevard County, and this is achievable. This is a actual truck taken this week, and we can do this on your road. Thank you. I'll leave this up. This is general comments, questions, or submission of any documentation as you're doing your public comments. If you'd like to make that, you could submit it to that email address. And then again, if you'd like to have our county arborist, if you're one of the homeowners and would like to actually schedule an appointment, I'm going to turn this around and we're going to turn to the comment period in a moment.
Do you get hazardous duty pay for doing this? Okay, so that was very informative, Mark. I want to thank you for all the hard work you and your staff have done. You did a terrific job. I think you cleared the air a lot for our folks. We're going to move into our comment period. Rockledge Drive homeowners that receive letters will be given preference on speaking first, and each of you will be given 2 minutes for comments, and all others will wait until these homeowners are finished, and I think we have 5. And then there will be time for the other people that are here, concerned citizens, and they'll get 1 minute slots made available. There will at no time be question and answer. This is comment period only, and no one may cede their time to another speaker. So at this point, we're ready for our first speaker, William Marisick. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I just want to let you know I'm not for trimming or cutting of the trees on Rockledge Drive.
Okay, could you just state your address for the record?
2000.
Yeah, I know it's on here, but
or
it has, no,
2005 Rockledge Drive.
We'll give you plenty of time.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to go on record that Rockledge Drive Tree Coalition, along with the attorney presented to the county multiple alternatives to cutting the trees a year ago, with Kurt Smith and legal team agreeing next step would be to bring the same group together this year and try and reach an agreement. Okay, we're not aware of why that never happened. Instead, individual letters were sent to residents. Yesterday, July 7th, our attorney requested the county attorney to set up our private meeting to present alternatives and reach a compromise. We'd like a commitment from the commissioner that there will be no action to cut the trees until we have the opportunity. The RDTC hired a national recognized expert traffic and safety engineer who conducted a detailed study of the road, trees, and alternatives to preserving the trees. For transparency's sake, we shared his CV with the commissioner on July 7th, which was yesterday, shortly after receiving a call from Kurt Smith's office, would only allow 1 minute for his presentation. We have submitted the study and questions to the commissioner to review and consider prior to our next meeting. So we hope we have that next meeting. In the areas of Rockledge Drive where you have only a maintenance right-of-way, what are the dimensions or what determines the area you are allowed to maintain? Is it correct that your maintenance rights of right-of-way does not give you ownership, including air rights? If you are claiming ownership, does that represent a taking? If your maintenance rights of way is limited to pavement and the paved area is not 20 feet, will you have to reimburse the property owner if you plan to expand to 20 feet?
Thank you, sir. Do you have another sentence or 3 you want to say?
Thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate it.
Okay, next would be Tom Bradford. And Douglas Simon, you'll be next. So wherever you are, would you come down and have a seat in the front? That'll save us some time.
Good
Thank you,
evening.
Tom.
I'm Tom Bradford, 2105 Rockledge Drive. I have one of the trees that's scheduled to be removed, and I'm certainly against this plan. My question is, why can't signage indicating limited clearance be used on Rockledge Drive instead of cutting the trees? Although there is one sign on Mclver, another on Coquina, there are none on Rockledge Drive. Now, the reason trees were hit by trucks could be because Brevard County has never placed a sign indicating limited clearance on the entrance to Rockledge Drive from US 1. Now, the city of Rockledge uses signage. I don't understand why Brevard cannot. And the proposal to clear cut a 14 by 20 corridor on Rockledge Drive is really only for the benefit of large trucks. No other emergency vehicles otherwise need a full 14-foot clearance. And I think that encouraging more truck traffic and increasing that kind of accessibility is going to create a traffic hazard that threatens the public's health, safety, and welfare. This would be endangering cyclists, walkers, joggers, and residential quality of life. I also feel like that there is, what I heard in the beginning here was a great deal of concern about anything but the fact that these trees are a treasure. And you can't just plant something and get a canopy back within a generation or two. So I would like to see some other solution figured out. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, sir. Douglas. And next up will be Tim Curry. So if you could come forward, please.
I'm going to cover a little bit of what the previous speaker said. But first, it was mentioned about clearing up falsehoods. In that vein, I'm just wondering about these couple lawsuits that were supposed to have been out there. Commissioner Smith mentioned back a ways there were 2 lawsuits, one from Waste Management and one from an RV driver. And it was sort of mentioned tonight, not as a lawsuit, but just mentioned. And, well, maybe I missed it, but I'd like to get a handle from the county on just exactly when these things happen, because I went to the records department at the Brevard County Courthouse, right across the street here. No mention of it. A couple other people also went there, no mention of it. So let's get these falsehoods straightened out. And as far as accidents go, I'd also like to know how many were drunk, how many were high, how many were on drugs, how many were speeding, rather than just saying accidents and blaming the trees that, I guess, ran out into the road. And I agree with the previous speaker, making it less safe, having truck traffic easily get down Rockledge Drive. All right, next, whole different topic. This is an historic road. That's why I'm wearing my American Native Indian jacket here. Historic road. It's the first road in America to be an interstate highway, which I got off Google. These native trees were here when the American natives were here. This was originally an Indian trail. In the mid-1800s, settlers laid down shells and made it what is now Rockledge Drive. It was a road for horses and buggies with the shells. Additional oak trees were planted just before the automobiles came in, and it was to keep the horses cool. And I'll just do my one more sentence. With the advent of autos, it was named the Dixie Highway, and then, as we all know, US 1. And to sum it up, you guys are killing history. These trees have been here for basically forever, and you have your little short stint here, and with it goes the trees. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Tim. And next up will be Grover Gregory. If you would come down, please. Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely. This road is of importance to the entire county and even the state as a designated scenic drive and the Indian River Lagoon byway. It's also a state-designated scenic route mentioned in guidebooks and travel magazines, including Delta Sky Miles is one of them. So the question is, this road is obviously important to the entire county, so shouldn't this topic be discussed and decided by the entire Board of County Commissioners?
Thank you. Grover? And next up would be Matthew Nyler.
Grover Gregory, 2015 Rockledge Drive. I have 2 trees that were designated to be cut, or you would prefer if they were cut. And I have a few points here. I oppose this plan to cut today, tomorrow, or anytime. Basically, I have survived a couple of hurricanes with water coming over the seawall, and the seawall collapses and falls away, but the ground stays because of these tree roots. I think that this is an important asset to me personally. I also get protection from the wind, from the hurricane winds. You know, anybody can tell you having a tree a safe distance from your house between you and the wind will mitigate the risk of hurricanes. So I've also been following along and helping where I can the Indian River Lagoon restoration project, and one of the things we need to do is get more trees and things along the lagoon which will absorb the nitrates that flow down through the ground into the water. That's what these trees are doing. And the second issue regards my favorite topic, speed bumps. You know, God is telling us where to put the speed bumps. When you see a bunch of roots from a tree that are growing out in and buckling the pavement, that's where you put the speed bump. Don't go and take a perfectly flat, level piece of ground and build a speed bump and then put these signs up. It doesn't make sense. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
sir. Yeah. Matthew?
Hi, my name is Matthew Nyland.
Excuse me. Patricia Dixon, you'll be next. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Matthew Nyland. I live at 22 Bonaventure Drive, right around the corner from these trees. This is my neighborhood, and I'm very much against cutting these trees. I'm not a politician, but I really think this is not in the best political interest of you and your team. You may not run for this seat again, but somebody from your party will. You have every reason to be confident, given the 30-year grip that your party has on county politics here. But this ragtag group of neighborhood activists have collected 4,000 signatures in just a few weeks from people who oppose this action. And I'm confident if these trees get cut, they'll easily get 4,000 more. Now, given an 8,000 vote head start, a candidate more formidable than Matt Fleming might run for the opposition party in the next election. And I'm sure that the opposition will be using pictures of the millions of dead fish, hundreds of dead manatees, and will be happy to add the dead and mutilated trees from this scenic drive. I think you need to have a better reason to cut these trees than because we can, because somebody might come along that says we won't do this because we care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Patricia, and next up will be Carol Pope.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
No,
Patricia.
no,
I'm
you're
Patricia
Patricia.
Dixon. Yeah.
No, Carol Pope is,
You only got 1 minute. It's supposed to be 2 for those neighborhood.
no, these are not the homeowners that got letters.
We'll talk fast. Okay. I live at 2027.
And it's not hard and fast. I've given people
Okay.
a few extra
2027
minutes.
Rockledge Drive for over 21 years, 25 years of that living in the house below it, and I've been in this county for 37 years. We have went up and down that road all 37 years. At the end of our drive on 2027 Rockledge Drive is one of the largest trees designated to be removed. And I have a perspective that's slightly different. My husband's 100% disabled military, Air Force Major, served his country well under Schwarzkopf. And his greatest joy was watching every year. There's mated pairs of ospreys that come. There's mated pairs of owls. These birds have no voice. These are animals that are alive and part of the ecosystem. And this tree that you're talking about that's in the pavement has never had an accident to my recognition. Never have I seen a file claimed against it. It is at the end of my driveway, and trust me, if anybody could hit a tree, it's me, and I've never hit it. Please, I speak for the birds, and in 25 years, most of us might be up on the hill at Frontenac in the cemetery, and ask yourself, what do you want your decision to be? Do you want it to be for the heritage that we have, the gift? This is a beautiful gift. These trees are from God. You can't plant anything that's going to come back and look like this in 200 years. And the ecosystem says also, below the ground, you have more complicated system than you do above. So probably 25 to 30 feet below the ground, that it is, if you cut one tree, 3 of them are going to die because they interact.
Thank you, ma'am.
Smithsonian.
And thank your husband for his service. Patricia, did you hear me ask that you would tell your husband thank you for his service?
Oh, thank you. He was so proud to do it.
Well, we're happy that he did. Carol Pope.
Carol Pope.
And next will be Lou Kontnick.
715 Rockledge Drive. I'm opposed to the county plan to eliminate the canopy of oaks for a 14-foot-high clear-cut corridor to accommodate trucks on the south end of Rockledge Drive, creating a hazardous, unsafe condition and deteriorating our quality of life. That's why I joined the Rockledge Drive Tree Coalition. We retained a nationally known traffic engineer, Mr. Charles Huffine, Huffine, to examine the county proposal. As expected, he found numerous flaws in the justification for this project and was prepared to present them tonight and suggest alternatives. Commissioner Kurt Smith denied him this opportunity by limiting his presentation to 60 seconds. Therefore, I am introducing a copy of his report, including suggested alternatives, into the record, along with a copy of his CV. The public can read a copy of this report on Michelle Maricic, Maricic, Facebook page, and I have extra copies for any member of the media that might be here and want one.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Next up will be Sandra Sullivan.
Hi, thank you. Lou Kontnick, 3208 Birdsong Court. I'm a bike rider up on the road, and I want to make 3 points. Rockledge Drive is unique, it's beautiful, it's intimate. Now I'm hearing historic, it's valuable. Many of the trees clearly provide important support for the lagoon, secure the banks, stormwater runoff, may help with septic pollution, and also hurricanes. It's valuable. Local residents clearly want to find the best accommodation, and I've heard your presentation and appreciate it. I encourage a transparent discussion. Minimize the cutting and the pruning, and get down and have that conversation with the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Sandra, and next up will be Margaret Cornell.
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. So there's a no through truck sign as you come into the neighborhood. This has a scenic designation since 1965, which predates the Green Book. I took photos and spent about 3 hours there this weekend. There are power lines beneath the canopy, which is really ironic considering you're talking about cutting trees. And then you have a failing base on your road for the entire length, which is not related to the trees. You have what I saw is 3 trees that are uplifting the pavement. I would urge a delay on the cutting of trees, not only as a cool down period on this contentious issue, but time for the county to evaluate the opportunity for the state resiliency funding, $100 million in grants in partnership with local communities from the state. And to deal with impacts of sea level rise, intensified storms, and flooding. And these trees do an important service for the lagoon and that resiliency.
Margaret? And next up will be Pat Scott.
Thank you so much for being and listening to us. There is 4,000 of us who are speaking on behalf of trees. I have been selling real estate here for about 22 years. The reason people buy on Rockledge Drive is because the tree in unique terrain. The trees are natural bank for the shoreline, basically, and provide shade, provide comfort, provide unique character. By taking the trees down, you're going to remove the value of people who have paid thousands of dollars to pay taxes, who have maintained, love the trees, and you basically take this all away from them. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, I'm Pat Scott, and
Pat, excuse me 1 second.
yes.
Walter Cornell, you'll be next. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yes. Okay.
Okay, I'm
okay, Pat. Go ahead.
Pat Scott, and I live at 1350 Friday Road in the Cocoa area. I do not live on River Road, but I have spent a lot of years traveling and bicycling and walking on the road. But oaks, I want to remind you, play an essential role as a keystone species and foundation of the food web, as well as providing homes for wildlife. You may think of the acorns produced as food and the nest built in it in the oak trees, but their leaves are essential as a host plant for insects. According to Dr. Doug Ptolemy of the University of Delaware, oaks support 534 species of butterfly and moth caterpillars, more than any other native tree or plant. These caterpillars are not only the primary food source for migrating and breeding birds, but are essential food for baby birds. So removing these would be a big impact. But losing the native plant diversity and the insects and wildlife they support ultimately will have devastating impacts on our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
now
evening.
we have Walter, and next will be Kirk Rummelhoff.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being here.
At 57 Ridge Court, which is in the River Ridge community just off of Rockledge Drive. Our representative, Commissioner Lober, I understand is not here today. Is that, oh, you are here. Good. I wanted to see that. So, you know, Rockledge in your district has managed to mitigate the risk that's being presented here, which seems to focus on transportation, large, heavy truck transportation. And if you ever drive this road, as everybody will agree, say on a Sunday at about 11 o'clock in the morning, the very last thing anybody would want to see is big, heavy trucks. Now, we know that Waste Management has accommodated by using alternative trucks that lower the headroom required. And then the only other issues seem to be emergency management. That's it. What I'd like to propose is that we defer this issue until we can have a more robust discussion with all commissioners available that affect this issue for those of us along all of Rockledge Drive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirk. Daniel Herdebusk.
My name is Kirk Rummelhoff. I live on 18 Hardy Circle North, which is at the north end of Rockledge Drive. With regard to this issue, I'm not in support of cutting down the trees or trimming. Collectively, we as citizens and you as elected officials have the right, and moreover, the responsibility to preserve and protect the natural resources that we have been fortunate enough to be gifted with in this area. The oak trees that have stood along Rockledge Drive for 100 to 200 years simply must be preserved. That just, to me, is a no-brainer. I ride that road every day from Rockledge down to US 1. It's a 6-mile ride. I enjoy both ends of that ride, both the part of Rockledge that's not under discussion right now and the part of Rockledge Drive that is. I want to close with some thoughts relative to my grandson. I ride with him every weekend. We share those trees. These trees can live for 100 to 200 more years. I'd like him to be able to share those same thoughts with his grandson.
Kirk, I want to tell you that he's lucky to have a grandfather that takes him for bike rides. And you're Daniel?
Yes.
Next up will be Mary Helen King. So if you could come down, please, so that you have quick access to the podium. Daniel, you have the floor.
My name's Daniel Herdebius. I live at 2029 Rockledge Drive. I'm bracketed by these people who have concerns about their trees. I have to agree. I wouldn't hate to see these trees cut, and I am opposed to the cutting of them. One thing that I have not heard mentioned was the cost to us taxpayers from the start of all this to what it's going to be when you're done cutting and planting trees. It does come out of our tax dollars, and I have a feeling that that total is going to be rather exorbitant. So I'd like to see it stopped. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next up will be Mary Helen King, and after that we'll have James Dwight. So James, if you could come down and sit up front here. You have the
Mary
floor.
Helen King from 2061 Rockledge Drive. I'm a longtime resident of Rockledge Drive, and I have a few questions. I'd like to know if the county, what exactly is the county's right-of-way for Rockledge Drive that you've mentioned? And is it a right-of-way or is it a right to access or a right of access? I'd also like to know your definition of clean cut. I think we all need to understand what that would be prior to any decisions being made. I've lived on that road for years, and paving that road prior to 2014, 2018 has never been an issue. The oak trees have never been an issue. I'd also like to know the exact causes of the accidents where you say safety is a factor with the trees, because I don't think the trees are the issue. I think it's the driver that's the issue. I'd also like to ask that transparency means all residents in that area that you are addressing with a reconstruction plan, which we all need to see, get letters. Selecting certain people to get letters about trees on Rockledge Drive is not transparent. And you don't have permission to come on my property and cut trees or trim them. Or put a swale in because there's a drainage issue. Thank you.
Thank you. After James, we'll have Ashley Hardy.
Good evening. My name's James Dwight. I live at 24 Vermont Avenue. I'm a 40-plus year resident of Brevard County. I've never run for office, but I've served on many boards. And I appreciate the jobs that you do, many times thankless. I'm very proud of the residents that have come out. Like everybody else, I think that the process needs to be slowed down, more to be put into it, and to examine it and give people the opportunity to really have their voices heard, to look at the different options. All you have to do is ride a bike or walk down that road and look and go, I hope they don't cut that one. I hope they don't hurt something that is living along that bank. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work, and proud of everybody behind me.
Thank you. Ashley, and next will be McKenna Cons?
Chorus.
Course. McKenna Cars. And where is she?
She's sitting right there.
We have a seat down here or over here, if you would come down and have a seat. Okay, Ashley, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ashley Hardy, and I live at 1279 Rockledge Drive in Rockledge. First off, I want to thank you all for what you're doing to come up with solutions that will work for everybody. I'm going to try not to repeat what everybody else has said, but the first thing I want to point out is this is a statewide treasure. When I moved to Brevard County, I dreamed one day that I was going to get to live on Rockledge Drive, and then also before that would just drive up and down, as a lot of people do. You all probably do that as well. We have tons of people there. But I agree with you, the thing about Rockledge Drive is unique. It requires a unique solution. There are ways, we should be working around the road because the location of the trees are historic where they're planted. And so one of the things you could do is look into vehicles that are lower. Why do that? Well, these vehicles, instead of accommodating the road to large vehicles, we should be doing the reverse. We should be accommodating the vehicles to the road because the road is historic. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Keaton Course. And, okay. Gotcha.
Hi, my name is McKenna. I'm 13 years old, and I've lived on Rockledge Drive for just over 3 years now. And just in the short amount of time that I've been living here, I can't tell you how much I've fallen in love with the trees. I'm a swimmer and a soccer player, so I love to stay active. I often take runs with my family down Rockledge Drive to train for sports, and the shade that the oak trees give makes the runs so much more pleasant on hot days. Let's just say I run a little bit faster on the parts without shade. My family and I also enjoy to take bike rides and golf cart rides to Cocoa Village. Often when we try to head down there, it ends up taking us much longer than it should because we were looking at the trees. The trees don't just provide shade, they are also just so beautiful, and the environmental impact that removing the trees would have is just not worth removing them. There are just so many reasons to love these beautiful ancient trees. I believe we should just leave them alone.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Keaton Course.
Okay.
I am 11 years old and I live on Rockledge Drive. I think we should not cut down our trees because they give animals shelter, they help us keep cool, and they prevent floods. One reason why is that the water that are going in these floods, the roots in the trees are soaking in the water. They give us shade to be protected from being hot and the sun, and they also give us shade. They give us oxygen also. My favorite thing is to take my dogs out on walks, and it gives me a chance to look at the trees, which makes me think that they're much
Go ahead.
much pretty without being cut.
McKenna, that was a great job. Next up will be Jessica Ware, and after that we have Thomas Simon. Sorry.
I'm from Melbourne, but my sister and her family live on Rockledge Drive. My primary concern about these trees is environmental. Hub trees, which are also known as mother trees, are the biggest and oldest trees in an area. Obviously, these oak trees we're talking about qualify as mother trees. Research has shown that mother trees are crucial to the ecosystem. They are connected to hundreds of other trees and plants via an underground root system. They share nutrients with saplings and struggling plants in order to help them survive. They help prevent disease in neighboring trees. Mother trees also prevent against fire due to their ability to share nutrients. We're spending $70 million to clean up the damage we have done to the Indian River Lagoon, and cutting down these mother trees would be a further detriment to the lagoon because the oaks are helping to keep the mangroves and waterfront foliage healthy. I urge you to research the Mother Tree program before you make a decision, because it may seem like just a few trees, but this decision would irreversibly harm our ecosystems, which ultimately harms our residents who desire and depend on a healthy environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, Thank you for being here.
Hello, thank you. So Thomas Simon, I live on 1335 Rockledge Drive. I don't have any of the affected trees this time, but that may change as vehicles continue to get larger and larger. So this group says that you have my service and my safety in mind for enacting this change. And I have a question though on how we're being serviced right now. So how are we being serviced with the tree canopies as low as they are? My trash gets picked up, school buses go down the road. So how is that possible? So I do walk the drive every single day, and I see public service vehicles going down that road at far exceeding the speed limit of 20 to 25 miles per hour. Perhaps if they slowed down a little bit, they wouldn't be hitting the trees. Also, if you really do have my safety and the safety of everyone who lives on the drive's road in mind, perhaps you would start to more aggressively police motorcycles that speed down Rockledge Drive at 40, 45, 50 miles an hour. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last but not least is Nancy Simon.
My name is Nancy Simon. I live at 2050 Rockledge Drive. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. The county is claiming that there's a 14-foot clearance necessary for service and emergency vehicles. We have spoken to Waste Management, as was mentioned before, that they are using lower trucks on Rockledge Drive. I spoke to the fire department. They've said they have no trouble getting down Rockledge Drive with their engines or with ambulances. Also, why is there not a similar tree cutting program for the 3 side streets that lead from US 1 to Rockledge Drive? They need the same type of services. Why just Rockledge Drive? Also, there are more joggers and bikers than there are cars. And you are taking a 14-foot clearance, which is similar to that on US 1, which is a busy commercial road. If I can continue for another minute?
Well, I won't give you a minute, but I'll give you another sentence or 3.
Okay. Susan Phillips, the operational manager for District FDTOT, could not find any remaining state jurisdiction. Without state jurisdiction, there is no 14-foot mandate. State Traffic Manual, the Green Book, does not use mandatory language that applies to arterial and collector roads, not local roads like Rockledge Drive.
Thank you. Good information. Okay, that's all the comment cards that we have. Does anyone up here have anything that they would like to say?
Mr. Smith, I would in a few minutes, if that's all right, but
sure.
I'd like to see where this goes first.
Well, go ahead.
Okay,
I'll give you the floor.
In that spot. Okay, I've been kind of furiously scribbling and taking notes. And first, I apologize. My dog had a pretty major surgery yesterday, had his spleen and half of his liver taken out, and I had to go to pick him up out of county at the veterinary hospital. So I came, dropped him off with my wife, and then came directly here from there. So that's why I'm running a few minutes later than I otherwise would have. All right, I'm going to try to make sense of my cursive here, so bear with me. I just want to make sure I get most of what I intend to get across. So first off, I live off of Rockledge Drive. I can't leave my subdivision without using Rockledge Drive. It's not possible. I can't go to work or get groceries without going on Rockledge Drive. My wife and I take our dog, although he's not going to be doing any sort of a long walk now, typically twice a day along Rockledge Drive down into even D4 in unincorporated Rockledge. I paid a premium for my lot several years ago because of its location off of Rockledge Drive. It's not just happenstance that caused me to be there. 2 reasons that I bought there chose it as my forever home. Number 1, proximity to the river. Number 2, which is almost equal with that, the oak trees all over the place. When we built, we left as much natural as we possibly could. And in particular, the oaks, we left as many as we could possibly leave on our lot. The only oaks that came out were those necessary in order to construct the structure. We left a lot more than even my neighbors left with comparable sized lots. Now, I want to talk about a couple things, because I'm happy to meet with folks. I'm happy to hear what you all have to say. But for those that have seen how I operate, I think you'll know I'm kind of a cut-to-the-chase guy. Sometimes it comes across as perhaps less than diplomatic, but at least you know what you're getting with me. So I want to do a little bit of that now. So please don't take my being direct as being uncivil or mean. That's not my goal. First thing, there are so many rumors that have been going around. I heard some today, in fact, outside on Rockledge Drive that I hadn't heard in the past. A couple that I want to dispel, at least as far as I can tell, from my position as one of the 5 guys that normally is hanging out up here for the meetings. As far as this being done as a convenience for waste management, I could care less about waste management. I have tried on more than one occasion, unsuccessfully by 1 vote, to hammer them and implement fees based upon some service issues that they've caused. From my perspective, I don't want to give them a break on anything. So to save them money by causing them to use a different type of truck that may be more convenient, that has absolutely no value in my book. Now, I'm not going to go out of my way to spend taxpayer dollars to stick it to waste management. If they happen to tangentially benefit from something as an unintended consequence or an unintended side effect of a policy that's good for the county or good for a particular district, oh well, it is what it is, but that's certainly not my goal. Another one that I couldn't help but laugh a little bit about, because I started wondering which one it was. I heard there's a rich guy that's got a big RV that lives on Rockledge Drive, and apparently he's got pull with the county, and he wants to get that big old RV to his home from one direction or the other or both, and that's why we're cutting the trees down as a county. I don't know who the guy is, so if he's got pull, it's not with my office. I don't have an RV. Frankly, my garage isn't big enough to have an RV. I've got a little coupe, so I can get by with just about anything by way of trees. I will tell you some of the things. I think a lot of points have been totally valid here, and I think some of the other points, frankly, are a little far-fetched. I'm an attorney by trade. When I'm prepping for a trial, I tend to think, especially if it's a jury trial, how is this going to go across with a jury? And if I have 60 arguments, or 6 arguments, let's say, and 4 of them are really strong, I'm going to leave the other 2 out potentially if they're really so stretchy that I don't think that they're going to help, and they may in fact cause the person that's sitting there in a jury to say, it's a little much. So as far as, I'll give you an example as far as one of them, and I don't mean to pick on one individual, but just since it was brought up here a few minutes ago, the oaks, I guess it was alluded to them meaningfully reducing nitrogen in the lagoon. I'm a lagoon guy. I live there. Its health impacts the value of my property, and I was out on the dock this morning. I've got my little One Lagoon hat. Now, that's kind of free with purchase, I suppose. But the point is, I love the lagoon. I live off of it. I'm happy to live off of it. It's very intentional. But when we're talking about, in many cases, oaks on the other side of the road that are 20-plus feet away from the lagoon, I'm thinking that they're probably taking up nitrogen and organics from the soil, not from the brackish, largely saline water that in all likelihood might kill them or harm them or at least stunt their growth. In fact, when you see all the stuff that the oaks drop, and my wife and I can tell you, we get pretty muscular when it comes time to blow, rake, and pick up leaves. They put out so much more, some of which ends up in the water, than I could ever fathom just using common sense they'd ever take up. I don't know that was the most compelling argument, but in terms of it being something that takes generations to grow, yeah, that's a compelling argument. In terms of there potentially being alternatives that would allow the oaks to remain, I think that's a compelling argument. I will just tell you, from my perspective, and I've told this to everyone that's asked me outside of a meeting like this, I've said it, I think, as much on Facebook as well, and I'm just going to be blunt about this too. County commissioners in this county are not elected at large. They're other counties, like our sister county, Seminole County, which we share with in the 18th Judicial Circuit, that do have at-large elections. You have to live in your district, but you're elected by everyone in the county. Doesn't work that way here. I've had folks who are upset that I have essentially categorically refused to impose my personal beliefs or my professional beliefs on other colleagues on this and in other matters as it applies to their districts. And I'll tell you, the go-to that I've heard from folks with respect to that is, well, you're a county commissioner, so therefore you represent everyone in the county, and everyone in the county is therefore your constituent. That's interesting, and it sounds potentially valid at first glance, but I would ask you, how many folks here think that Bernie Sanders represents them? Senator in Vermont, I think most folks know who the guy is. And if you don't think that he represents you, well, why is that if he's a U.S. senator and you're a U.S. resident or a U.S. citizen? Again, we don't elect U.S. senators at large in this county. There was a decision made back in the day not to elect county commissioners at large. So I will tell you, when it comes to matters that impact the county as a whole, obviously all 5 of us that are up here have a duty and have an obligation to weigh in and make our voice heard. That's what a representative democracy exists to allow folks to do. When it comes to matters that disproportionately impact one district, though, I almost at a religious level defer to the individual in whose district the exclusive or the nearly exclusive impact will be felt. And it's not that I'm doing it out of, in this case, love for Commissioner Smith. Whether I love the guy, hate the guy, have a crush on the guy, am jealous that he has a fuller head of hair than I do, or whatever the case may be, that's not why I'm doing it. There are a couple of reasons. One, I respect the fact that we live in a representative democracy, and his constituents overwhelmingly, now twice to the point that he's term limited, elected him. Everyone else is term limited up there. They have been overwhelmingly elected in at least 2 elections. The other thing that frankly is more important, and I think this goes unsaid a lot of times, I don't want my constituents to suffer because of a decision that I make, even with a good intention. And what I mean by that is, I live in D2, I work in D2. Commissioner Smith lives in D4 and he works in D4. He knows D4 better than I know D4. I can get to the courthouse, I can get to the government center here, but I don't live here. I don't generally work here. My office is in Merritt Island, my house is off of Rockledge Drive in Rockledge. I would be much more comfortable having those individuals who have that local knowledge, as a general rule, applying that to their districts and making decisions that they're better equipped to make than I am, just as I would hope as Commissioner Smith and frankly the other commissioners, as a general rule, defer to me on issues that solely or disproportionately impact D2. Should it be that way? I have no idea. But the reality is, if I start poaching, whether it's Commissioner Smith on this or injecting my will as to some matter that appears in some other district, don't kid yourself. That's going to set the precedent that that's something that now is the new standard, where we're no longer going to defer to the individual commissioners in matters that disproportionately impact or solely impact their district. That is a dangerous road to go down. I'll tell you, we had an issue that disproportionately impacts D2 earlier in the week at the commission meeting with respect to an agritourism operation. Every single one of the commissioners followed what I wanted to do with that. I will tell you, every single neighbor of this agritourism operation, I am sure is thrilled that they gave me that level of deference. So it's something I have to be careful with. Now, I'll tell you, in terms of the Rockledge Drive tree issue, I'm conflicted because I live there, and as a resident, I want one thing, and I think you can figure out that what I want is probably a lot closer to what you guys want as a resident than what my deference to Commissioner Smith would suggest, perhaps up here. I will tell you as well that not all of the trees are located in D4 that Public Works has proposed either trimming or removing outright. From my perspective, and this is in D2, and if Commissioner Smith has this view, great. If he has a different view, it's his choice, it's his district. My view is we remove trees as an absolute last resort. If we have gone through truly reasonable due diligence, not a joke, and not so much due diligence that we're doing it for the purpose of just continuing to do it without really achieving anything. You may have some folks that think that not enough due diligence has been done simply because a decision doesn't agree with what they're looking for. I don't view it that way. My thought is, with respect to this, there are other options sometimes available. Some of them depend on which side of the road the trees are on. If the trees are on the east side of the road, for instance, my thought, and we have an issue actually in Merritt Island, and this does pertain to you, just bear with me if you would, where we were looking to pave a dirt road. And I made it very clear at the outset, we're not going to be paying for right-of-way, we're not going to pay for land in order to spend taxpayer dollars to pave a road that's dirt. It's not that we took the paved road away from them. It's not that they've been paying a millage that was raised as a result of their house values being raised because there's pavement in front of them. This was something we were doing because we were able to do it. It's something that helped them, and we try to pave dirt roads when we're able to do that. I had said to the folks up there, essentially, your job, if you want this done, because we don't have the money allocated at this point for it, is this. We're going to survey every single resident on the road. If anyone says they don't want this done, we're not going to do it. If anyone says there's a caveat with accepting the paving, we're not going to do it. Meaning, I can't guarantee you that a mailbox, and they didn't have developed oak trees to the degree that we do on Rockledge Drive, but if they have a little tree that needs to be moved or may have to be taken out, it's either you agree to it, we'll make a genuine good faith effort to preserve what we can, but I can't guarantee you anything, or you don't. Ended up getting a call back from one of the individuals that was heavily involved in that saying, well, does it really need to be 100%? I said, yes. So we went ahead, we surveyed after they said they'd made the rounds and they were confident that the responses would be what they needed. Some folks didn't respond at all. We had one person say no, and we had a couple, I believe, 2 or 3 say yes with a caveat. So I said, well, let me know when you have these folks change their mind, and we'll revisit it. I'm not promising you I'm not going to allocate the funds to something else, whether it's in Rockledge or elsewhere, but we have it at this point, and it may be available for a while, but I can't promise you. So long story short, they ended up doing what they did. We had no one say no at the end when we went and resurveyed them. I bent a little by saying, okay, I'm not going to begrudge you guys and hold against you those that can't even bother to respond to the survey. So what that has to do with this is as follows. At the end, the 2 individuals that pushed this, after we'd already spent quite a bit of county money in doing engineering, in proceeding with this moving forward, they said, oh, well, we want to charge you to obtain the land that you're going to need to widen this dirt road so that you can pay to pave it and improve our house values. Absolutely not. I'm not going to have the county extorted or bent over the barrel for that. I said to Public Works, we're done. We're not paving that road. We're not going to pay them when they knew this was the plan all along, when they knew that the road would have to be widened to be paved. We're going to pay them for the right to pay more to pave a road that was never paved. Forget it. No good deed goes unpunished. And I said at the time there are going to be other things that come up that could potentially use the money, where it won't be a no good deed goes unpunished type of a thing necessarily. And I'll give you an example. So let's say, for instance, on the east side of Rockledge Drive in D2, we have a tree that the county is looking at removing. From my perspective, and again, I try to be fair with everyone and treat everyone the same. If the property owner to the west of where the tree is, on whose lot the tree falls, if they're willing to give us a piece of their front yard, how much? I'm going to defer to Public Works. I don't know, 2 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet, something in that ballpark perhaps. I don't mind looking at spending a little bit of money and paving the road a little bit westward so that we don't have to butcher the trees on the east. I'm fine looking at doing that. Now, if it's prohibitively expensive or there's some major utility issue where there's an FPL pole and they refuse to move it, we may have to revisit another option with that. Alternatively, when it comes to trucks in the unincorporated portion of D2 on Rockledge Drive, I'm okay looking at whether or not there is an option to have shallower trucks. If there's a fire truck, if there's a problem getting fire trucks in there, such that they have to go into the oncoming lane, and frankly, the lanes are so small there anyway, it's almost like, well, it is basically like they were built for horse and buggy. I know there's some folks here that actually informed me some time back that they actually ran acetylene before they had natural gas down there. So it's an old road. But the point is, if we can do something where we can look at getting shallower vehicles for county services, I'm okay looking at that, but I don't think it's fair making folks in Cape Canaveral pay for that where it disproportionately benefits folks in Rockledge, even me. I think with something like that, what I would like to see, if that's the direction that we go in, is polling the folks that would be impacted, polling the folks that would disproportionately benefit, and saying, we can put an MSBU, so basically almost an MSTU style of an entity, and we will charge you, not to profit, we will charge you our actual increased cost to have these vehicles fielded for that specific street. Spread it out over a 10-year period. I don't know if it's a low cost, I don't know if it's a high cost, but I think that's something that's fair to look at. If, for instance, we can, instead of going to 14 feet in District 2, if we can do more frequent trimming and keep it a little bit lower, I'm open to doing that too. I think that's reasonable as well. But I'm not going to impose my position in D2 on D4. I will tell you, though, just to reiterate, my standing direction to Public Works from my office and from my position, good, bad, or indifferent, is do not take trees out unless there is no alternative that we can explore that would allow us to keep them. I want to see them as a resident there. I'd like to see them as a commissioner there. I do take note, and I think another valid point that was brought up is the city of Rockledge as well. Actually, all of the city of Rockledge, along Rockledge Drive, I believe, is in D2. They've managed to keep it in a certain way. Now, does that mean that their ambulances, or I guess technically our ambulances, their fire trucks, for instance, are running down the middle of the road? Maybe. I don't know, but I think these are things that we can explore in D2 before we move forward. I would just caution you with respect to Commissioner Smith, and I don't have conversations with him about matters that even conceivably are going to come up with the commission, so I've not had the right or the ability to speak with him about this beforehand, so I've not been entitled to share my opinion with him beforehand. But I'll tell you, as a gentleman who is term limited, who has articulated some reasons that may not, in your subjective opinions, or my subjective opinion necessarily, may not weigh out with the same end result as what you get or what I necessarily get, if he believes that cutting them down is the right thing or trimming them to a high level is the right thing, there is no way that you're going to convince him by some of the negativity that I saw outside. I think coming here, articulating your concerns, that's a way to do it potentially. If there's any way for it to happen, I think that's the way you do it. I think you win more with honey than vinegar. And I've seen a lot more honey in this meeting than I have outside of the meeting, which has been mostly vinegar. Again, with respect to D2, nothing is going to come down in the immediate future. With respect to D4, I'm going to defer to Commissioner Smith, though. So, again, if you all want to talk with me about D2, I'm happy to talk with you about D2. I'm happy to share my ideas. If you want to communicate them to anyone, whether it's Public Works or otherwise, you can do with them what you will, but that's where I stand.
Are you finished?
I can keep going. It's like filibuster, right?
I just wanted to pass on. I was in high school when you started this.
But you still have a full head of hair.
Thank you for your input. Well, I'm not as eloquent as my fellow commissioner, but I will tell you that there will be no trees that are just willy-nilly chopped down. There will be no limbs willy-nilly chopped down. There will be a purpose to all of this. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that we're not going to make everybody happy, but my purpose is to keep people safe, number one, and to preserve what you guys have. And that is a really nice place to spend an afternoon, a morning, walking, riding, driving. We need to preserve that, and that's what we intend to do. And these guys up here that have spent the time and the effort to look at these trees, they know what these trees need. They're not looking, especially our arborist. I mean, this guy's a tree hugger. He doesn't want to cut a branch off, much less a limb, unless it's absolutely necessary. So rest assured that we're not going to just willy-nilly just clear-cut trees. I know that's been alluded to. We're going to chop all the trees down, and there's not going to be any trees left. That's not going to happen. Let's just put an end to that right away. So, as I said, not everybody's going to be happy, but we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to look to the future because that's important. That's what we're looking for. These trees are majestic, and they've been around a long time, and it would be great if they're around for a lot longer time. Now, unfortunately, some of these trees are already to the point where they may be dying. So the owners are going to have a choice whether you want to let that tree just continue to die, or would you like the county to remove it and replace it with a 6 or 8 or 10 foot new oak tree that in 20 or 30 years will start to show its own splendor, because that's going to have to happen anyway. Trees do die. We have a tree where I grew up that was a famous tree. It was the Salem oak, and it's rumored that one of the founders of South Jersey signed a treaty with the Lenape Indians under that oak, and it fell down about 2 years ago. It was tragic. It was like somebody died in that county. It was a 500-year-old tree. It was huge. So trees die. They're going to die. And when they do, you know, it's just like people. We have young people to take their place. And if that happens on Rockledge Drive or some other street, hopefully somebody will plant a tree in its place. Because what you do today, and I don't remember which philosopher said it, but no greater is a man that plants a tree whose shade he'll never stand in. So that's what I've got to say about this. There were an awful lot of good points brought up tonight, some ideas some people gave me. I will huddle with my folks here, and we won't do anything without letting you know ahead of time. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. It was very enlightening. And if you weren't here, we would still have done the same thing. But by being here, you've given me some more ideas and some thoughts. So again, I thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your evening.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.